It has been more than 2 years since Breonna Taylor was shot and killed in her Louisville home during a botched police raid after officers with a no-knock warrant broke down her front door after midnight. The 26-year-old emergency room technician, who was not even the target of the raid, was shot 5 times. To this day, none of the officers have been held accountable for killing an innocent, unarmed woman in her own home, where she was supposed to be safe. The only charges ever brought were against one officer accused of endangering a neighboring white couple when shots were fired went into their apartment. And even then, the officer was cleared. And no charges were ever filed regarding Breonna's black neighbors, who also had bullet holes in their walls. In a 2-part special investigation that airs tonight and tomorrow, Vice News has uncovered new information about a host of illegal activities allegedly perpetrated by Louisville police officers, including sexual assault and pocketing cash from police seizures, including taking money from Breonna Taylor's home after they killed her.
When you say crooked people, what do you mean?
Like keeping drugs, keeping money, and stuff that they seized off from the defendants. They would tell me when they go and do these busts that, like, let's just say 4 of them going to do it, everybody gets money split equally. The most that I've ever seen them get was $500,000. They split most of the money amongst themselves.
So they only reported some of the $500,000?
I don't know if any of it got reported.
Vice News correspondent Roberto Ferdman joins me now. Thank you for being here, Roberto. How widespread was this? Sounds like a theft ring.
I mean, based on our reporting, I would say that it's fairly widespread within the narcotics unit. We've spoken to about 24 people whose homes have been raided and who say that more money was taken than police reported. We've identified several different instances, and through this reporting, it's our understanding that this isn't a matter of like 1 or 2 bad apples, people who were doing this, former narcotics officers, current narcotics officers at the department. It was more of something like a dozen narcotics officers who either were doing this or must have known about this because people that they were working with were executing warrants, seizing money, and then reporting less in many of these cases than people said was taken from their homes.
Yeah. And were any of the officers that were involved in killing Breonna Taylor doing this?
What we know is that the informant that you saw in this clip, who was describing what happened in a separate raid, the day after Breonna Taylor's raid, says that they were told by a member in Brett Hankeson's former unit, who was famously part of this raid, that $15,000 was found at the apartment that night. They said that they don't know what happened to it, but we spoke to Kenneth Walker, Breonna Taylor's boyfriend, who was at the apartment that night, and he said that he was aware of $1,000 that was at the apartment that went missing after the raid. And then on top of that, the day afterward, in a jail phone call, Breonna Taylor's ex, Jamarcus Glover, who was at the center of this investigation that led to these raids, said that he had given Breonna about $14,000. He says $8,000 plus another $6,000. And I think it's important to point out that there were 3 separate investigations into what happened that night, 2 by LMPD and 1 by the Attorney General's office. And despite investigators at LMPD pointing out this jail call recording where the money is mentioned, there never seems to have been an attempt to figure out if there was money there, and if so, who took it.
And Daniel Cameron, who ostensibly was the leader of that investigation, was supposed to get to the truth. He's now running for governor. That's interesting. But let's talk about these other allegations that include sexual misconduct, or essentially, is this extorting sex out of defendants?
I mean, the pattern that we've found and that we've seen through, we've called through hundreds of internal documents, most of them which the public, hasn't previously seen, interviews of officers, we've spoken to victims, is using the power that a police officer has to hold charges over someone's head. For instance, after they've arrested a woman, to solicit sex from them, whether that's, any sort of sexual activity. And these women, some of whom we've spoken to, have expressed how effective a police officer can be in wielding that power, because they have immense control over whether a charge is brought, whether a citation is handed in, and even what happens in the courtroom afterward.
Is there any evidence that the department, Internal Affairs, or Daniel Cameron, who's again running for governor, has tried to investigate any of this?
The police department has fielded many complaints against police officers, and I don't think it's fair to say that they haven't tried to investigate, but what our reporting, we believe, has shown is that the efforts to investigate these complaints, especially when the initial complaints come in, have really fallen short. They have not brought officers in for interviews. They have waited to request certain evidence, like officers' phones, and in doing so, they've allowed some of these bad actors to continue acting unchecked and in some cases victimize more women.
Did you find evidence in your reporting that other officers who might know that these would really come down to sort of a crime ring or theft ring inside of the department and have tried to speak up, have felt intimidated or been afraid to come forward?
Oh, I mean, I can say with great certainty that there is a lot of pressure internally to not speak to the press. And I say this because many of our sources are current and former LMPD officers. I know that this afternoon, after press started coming out, an email was sent to the entire department by the public information officer reminding everyone that it is against policy to speak to the media and that all requests should go through them. So absolutely, there's a lot of pressure to not speak to people outside. There are people that really want to internally. But I think that part of this is a system problem.
Yeah.
A big part of this is a system problem.
And let me ask you this, because we know that departments, police departments around the country have chosen to settle and spend taxpayer money to pay when they kill people, unarmed people. This happens a lot. Have there been attempts in these cases to settle with people who've had their money stolen, to cover it up that way?
Well, in the local system there, plea deals are very common, and this is true around the country. So, and this is true in all sorts of cases. It's true in sexual assault cases involving police officers. It's true when someone's home is raided. And the plea deals end up, I think, allowing for pretty lenient sentencing of officers and for things not to be found out by the public.